to help his adopted sister vent her anger. Big brother deliberately bumped my arm during my bridal toss. My hand slipped, and the bridal ball ended up in the hands of a beggar on the street. The commoners on the street jeered upon seeing this, exclaiming that the dignified minister's daughter was going to marry a beggar. I stood there frozen, my eyes reddening. Big brother beside me comforted me earnestly, saying, "Don't blame me. Last time you pushed Cheryl into the lake in public, she's been holding a grudge. She just wanted to embarrass you during the bridal toss today. She's still a child. Don't hold it against her. Don't worry, it's just for show. Neither father nor I would let you marry a beggar." As Big Brother finished speaking, it was as if a spell had been cast on me, leaving me rooted to the spot, unable to move. I watched as the crowd below the tavern buzzed with discussion. Big Brother cleared his throat, fist to his lips, then suddenly raised his voice. "My sister's hand slipped just now, so this bridal ball doesn't count. Let's do it again." As he spoke, he secretly signaled to Jaden Xia with his eyes. Jaden Xia, my childhood friend, the one I had intended to throw this bridal ball to today. Hearing the familiar name, I instinctively lifted my gaze. Jaden Xia was leaning against the carved railing, already handsome. The lake, blue brocade robe he wore now made his face appear as flawless as jade. Meeting my gaze, a trace of almost imperceptible detachment flickered in his eyes. He then straightened up and declared clearly, "The bridal toss is all about fairness and justice. How could there be any reason to do it again? Could it be that the esteemed minister's estate is trying to renege on its word?" My heart seemed to stop abruptly, my fingers clutching my skirt turning pale. Many around echoed Jaden Xia's words. Exactly. How can you throw it out and then take it back? Doesn't the minister's estate usually pride itself on integrity? Why go back on your word today? As the situation spiraled out of control, Big Brother pointed at Jaden Xia, his face livid. "You grew up with my sister since childhood and even vowed publicly that you would marry no one but her. So why are you saying such things now?" Upstairs sat a few notorious playboys of the capital, their idle chatter tinged with mockery. "What else? Young Lord Xia has found a new flame. Just yesterday, I saw with my own eyes. Jaden Xia took the second daughter of the minister's estate to the Jade Bloom to pick out the latest rouge. I heard he was dragged here against his will today. If you ask me, he never intended to catch that bridal ball. So that's how it is." I gently lowered my lashes, forcing back the moisture welling in my eyes, took a deep breath, stepped forward, and spoke softly yet clearly. "Who says this bridal ball doesn't count? The ball landing is fate's will. I accept this marriage." Big Brother turned sharply to look at me, his voice urgent and sharp. "Shu Yun, don't be foolish. You're the minister's daughter. How can you marry a beggar?" I tilted my head to look at him, the redness in my eyes finally impossible to conceal. There was a time when he was the big brother who sheltered me under his wing and cared for me with unwavering devotion. But now, merely because my adopted sister Cheryl Yun falsely claimed I pushed her into the water, he publicly pushed me into a dire situation on the most important day of my life. I curled my lips into a faint, scornful smile. "Xavier Yun, isn't this exactly what you wanted? Now that the esteemed minister's daughter is to marry a beggar, your dear sister Cheryl must be delighted, right?" Xavier Yun was taken aback for a moment, then furrowed his brows, his tone full of disapproval. "Are you still blaming Cheryl? This was clearly your fault. Her actions today were merely—" I could no longer hear his subsequent excuses, only turned and lifted my skirt, descending the stairs step by step. The surrounding crowd parted like a receding tide, spontaneously making way for me, their probing and sympathetic gazes falling on me like fine needles. As I passed by Jaden Xia, he called out to stop me. His voice still carried a tone of self-righteous admonishment. "Shu Yun, you don't need to publicly declare you'll marry a beggar just to spite me." He took half a step forward, his tone softening further, as if genuinely concerned for me. "We've grown up together since childhood. I've always treated you like a dear sister, and I'll surely help you find a suitable match from an equal family in the future." I turned back, forcing a mocking smile. "Dear sister? Jaden Xia faltered for a moment, a flicker of guilt flashing in his eyes. My gaze sharpened like a blade, my voice turning colder. Jaden Xia, even admitting you've changed your heart would be better than using sister as an excuse now. His face paled momentarily, his lips quivered, but ultimately he said nothing. Without further hesitation, I walked straight past Jaden Xia without glancing sideways, approaching the beggar standing in the corner in tattered clothes. The surrounding noisy discussions came to an abrupt halt. My big brother Xavier Yin stood on the second floor, leaning against the railing, his eyes filled with urgency as he leaned down and shouted at me, "Xiang Shu, have you gone mad? Come back at once." Jaden Xia also stood not far away, watching me with a heavy gaze, his lips pressed tightly together, radiating coldness from his entire being. In that moment, all eyes converged on me. I looked up at the man before me, his face smeared with grime, his body covered in blood, and slowly spoke. "Will you marry me?" The man's Adam's apple bobbed rapidly several times, and a strange glint flashed in his eyes, hidden behind strands of hair. He spoke, his voice crisp and clear, like a mountain stream flowing over stones. "You won't regret this." "I won't." "Very well. I'll marry you." Seeing this, Xavier Yin rushed down the stairs, but was intercepted halfway by Jaden Xia. "If you go to her now, you'll be playing right into her hands." "What do you mean?" Jaden Xia snorted coldly. "She's just acting out of spite toward us. She wouldn't actually marry this beggar." I heard everything but said nothing. Big brother, Jaden Xia, and I grew up together since childhood, inseparable, until 3 years ago, when I unexpectedly went missing and completely lost contact with them. My parents became deeply distressed because of it, and the Yun household grew somber, losing the warmth it once had, until Cheryl Yun appeared. She was a distant cousin on my mother's side, coincidentally bearing some resemblance to me in the eyes. After hearing her parents had passed away, my father and mother immediately brought her into the mansion and adopted her. Cheryl Yun was lively and sweet-tongued, winning over everyone in the mansion in no time. From then on, the once silent Yun mansion gradually became lively because of her presence. As time passed, everyone slowly forgot about my existence, until half a year ago, when I was found and brought home, looking as shabby as a beggar. I thought I would be met with the joy of reuniting with my family. Instead, they deliberately distanced themselves from me, afraid of making Cheryl jealous. On the night I returned home, I overheard my mother comforting Cheryl. "Cheryl, you will always be father and mother's daughter. That won't change no matter who comes back. Besides, your sister was abducted to the countryside for 3 years with no one to guide her, and her temperament has grown increasingly coarse and unrefined. How could she possibly compare to your obedient and sensible nature that pleases our parents so much?" I felt as if someone had poured a basin of cold water over my head, freezing me in place. In my hand, I still clutched the jade pendant my mother had given me before I went missing. The news that the daughter of the minister's estate was to marry a beggar spread from mouth to mouth among the people. When I returned to the estate, my parents and big brother were gathered around a pearwood table, chatting idly about something. After Xavier Yin finished speaking, my father slammed his palm on the table and twitched his beard. "Utter nonsense. You've completely disgraced our Yun family's reputation." My mother adjusted a cloth on the table, glanced at him, and said, "When a Shu returns later, don't scold her, or she'll make the whole household restless again. I suppose she's angry that her brother embarrassed her in public, which is why she's spitefully claiming she'll marry a beggar. She doesn't even know the beggar's name or where he lives. How could she possibly marry him so rashly? Does she want to never see us again for the rest of her life?" Beside them, Cheryl Yun symbolically squeezed out a few tears. "Mother, it's all my fault. If brother hadn't stood up for me, sister wouldn't be acting so stubborn." My mother tenderly wiped the tears from her face with a handkerchief. "My dear daughter, ever since she returned home, your father and I have had to accommodate her at your expense. You were just playing a joke on her. It's nothing serious." My father chimed in agreement. "Cheryl, this has nothing to do with you. Don't worry, Your sister is just being stubborn with us. She wouldn't actually ruin her life by marrying that beggar." As she spoke, my mother picked up a piece of watery red soft satin and handed it to Cheryl Yun. "Sweetheart, quickly choose the color you like before your sister comes back and snatches it from you." Just as she was speaking, my mother's peripheral vision suddenly caught sight of me standing quietly behind them. The fabric in her hand fell onto the table with a soft thud. After meeting my gaze, everyone's expressions became indescribably awkward. In the past, I would have thrown a hysterical fit and turned the house upside down, demanding to know why my mother guarded against me as if I were a wolf, when I had never competed with Cheryl Yun for anything. Questioning my father and big brother why their eyes only ever saw Cheryl Yun. Perhaps I was too exhausted from these recent days. Or maybe, having decided to leave, I no longer held any expectations for this family. Now, under everyone's tense gazes, I simply returned to my room without a word. A few days later, I met with that beggar as arranged. We chose an inconspicuous tea house as our meeting spot. The tea house was filled with a faint aroma of tea. Clutching the rim of the Celadon cup, my gaze drifted to the drizzling rain outside the window, and I found myself lost in thought. It wasn't until a strikingly handsome face with faint scars suddenly appeared in my view that I snapped back to reality. "Miss Yun, don't you recognize me?" The young man's voice was clear and crisp, like a cold mountain spring. I instinctively glanced at his coarse, patched up clothing, and my mind reeled. This handsome young man before me was actually the beggar who had caught my bridal ball beneath the tavern that day. Beneath the grime that day, his features had been this striking all along. As I stood there stunned, his gaze locked intently on me. I quickly cleared my throat, forcing composure as I spoke. "What is your name?" The man took a seat opposite me, his slender fingers lifting the teapot to pour himself a cup. Though his movements were ordinary, there was an innate elegance in his demeanor. "Just call me Jay Jiang." Suppressing my surprise, I pulled several silver bills from my sleeve and handed them to him. "In half a month, come to the Yun residence to marry me. This should be enough for you to outfit yourself properly." Before I could finish, Jay Jiang merely glanced at the silver bills without taking them, instead looking up at me with a hint of inquiry in his eyes. "Miss Yun, are you truly willing to marry a beggar like me who is nothing?" My heart tightened, sparking a competitive streak as I retorted, "Are you perhaps intimidated by the prestige of the minister's estate and dare not marry me?" He chuckled softly, gently pushing the silver bills back toward me with his fingertips, his motion tender, yet carrying an undeniable firmness. "What do you mean?" I frowned, pressing further. "It's not right to spend a woman's money," he said, lifting his gaze with glimmering eyes and a resolute tone. "Wait for me. I will surely come to marry you in half a month." I froze abruptly, involuntarily recalling all that awaited me at home, my eyes instantly misting over. I sniffled, but my voice remained clear. "If possible, please come as soon as you can." Noticing the redness in my eyes, Jay Jiang paused slightly, his Adam's apple bobbing. When he spoke again, his voice unconsciously carried a more solemn tone. "All right." By the time I returned home, the family had already begun their evening meal. Jaden Xia was there too, seated beside Cheryl Yun. Upon seeing me, the smiles on everyone's faces instantly stiffened. The lively atmosphere in the room instantly sank into an awkward silence. My big brother, Xavier Yun, was the first to react, beckoning me over and saying, "Xiangshu, come quickly and join us for the meal." I shook my head. "I'm not hungry. I'll head back first." As I was about to step away, my mother suddenly called out to stop me. "Xiangshu, your mother has something to discuss with you." I stood still. "What is it?" She approached me, hesitated for a moment, and then spoke. "Your father and I have decided to finalize the marriage between your sister and Jaden Xia." I lifted my face and glanced over at Jaden Xia. He instinctively turned his face away, avoiding my gaze. Seeing this, I curled my lips in a mocking smile. My mother grasped my hand tightly. "I know you've grown up with Jaden since childhood, but matters of the heart aren't about who came first. They require mutual affection. I promise I'll make up to you later. I calmly withdrew my hand and interrupted her. I have no objections. Wishing my sister and her husband a lifetime of happiness together. I never expected Jaden Xia to follow me. At that moment, he was gripping my wrist, refusing to let go. Frowning, I spoke up. Jaden Xia, what do you think you're doing? He lowered his gaze slightly, his voice softening. I know you said those things on purpose because you're angry with me. You must be feeling really upset inside right now, aren't you? Upset? Actually, I don't feel that upset. At most, I'm just a bit reflective. I used to think that everyone around me would be taken away by Cheryl Yun, except for Jaden Xia. When I first returned home 6 months ago, Cheryl Yun was obsessed with framing me and playing the victim. Back then, no matter how much I tried to explain myself, no one would believe me, except for Jaden Xia. He would gently hold my hand and say, Ashu, I believe you. I'll always be on your side. Because Cheryl Yun had taken my place, no matter how much she pestered him, he always maintained a proper distance from her. I thought that Jaden Xia, who had sworn to marry no one but me since our childhood and never gave up searching for me when I went missing, would always stand by my side. But I never expected that, in the end, he would join others in bullying me. He told me, Shu Yun, no wonder your biological parents prefer an adopted daughter over their own flesh and blood. With your prickly personality, who could possibly like you? Every time I exchange just a few words with Cheryl, you obsess over it, convinced I've fallen for her. You're constantly suspicious like some paranoid lunatic. Fine, I'll tell you now. Cheryl is more adorable, gentler, and prettier than you. And yes, I have fallen for her. Are you satisfied now? At that time, I saw him as my only lifeline while drowning. So even when he said such hurtful words, my first reaction wasn't anger, but questioning whether I was truly in the wrong. It wasn't until later that I realized Jaden Xia had only ever claimed to despise Cheryl Yun with his words. Yet he never once truly rejected her inappropriate advances. His words said one thing, but his actions showed another. This nearly drove me mad. The one truly at fault was him, not me. Seeing my prolonged silence, Jaden Xia assumed he had guessed my inner thoughts correctly. He allowed a soft sigh and continued speaking on his own. Ashu, we grew up together since childhood and once shared mutual affection. I truly don't want us to become like strangers. I can discuss with your parents. You and Cheryl Yun can both marry me as equal wives, with no distinction in status. What do you think? I looked up at him in disbelief. When had he become so shameless to this extent? Seeing my wide-eyed expression, Jaden Xia mistakenly thought I was too overjoyed to speak. He immediately straightened his sleeves with an air of arrogance. However, you must first promise me that after marrying into the Xia household, you won't target your sister at every turn as you did before. I couldn't bear to listen any longer, so I forcefully pushed him away and shouted in utter frustration, "Get out of my sight." Half a month later, it happened to be Cheryl Yun's birthday. This was also the day Jay Jiang was to come to marry her. In recent days, the rampant rumors in the streets had nearly vanished under my father's deliberate suppression. After all, no one truly believed that the daughter of the esteemed minister's estate would marry a beggar. Even my parents and big brother thought my public declaration about marrying a beggar was just an act of defiance. But they didn't know. I had completely lost hope in them and had long wanted to leave this home. Early in the morning, as I was about to push the door open, I heard faint rustling sounds from outside the courtyard. It was Xavier Yun's voice. "Let's hurry and leave. If that one wakes up and finds out we're taking Cheryl to Yangzhou for her birthday, she'll surely cling to us and not let us go." My mother's voice was hesitant. "Are we really going to leave Ashu alone at home? Won't she be upset?" For some reason, I feel somewhat uneasy in my heart. My father urged while packing his luggage, "Don't overthink it. I finally managed to get time off. There are hundreds of servants in this mansion attending to her. It's not like she'll starve to death, is it?" Cheryl Yun's voice sounded deliberately understanding. "How about we take sister along with us?" Xavier Yun clicked his tongue twice. Then, Do you still want to properly celebrate your birthday or not? My mother sighed softly. Well, let's apologize properly to Ashu when we return. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the entire courtyard fell completely silent. I pushed open the door and looked up at the cloudless sky. What beautiful weather. Then I called over the maid nearby. Baotsui, help me put on the wedding dress. I never expected Jay Jiang would hire a grand sedan chair with 8 bearers to marry me. Not only that, he also spent a fortune hiring a wedding band, playing from Imperial Avenue all the way to the alleyways of the city outskirts. Crowds of commoners gathered to watch. Candied dates and wedding sweets were scattered by the handful along the streets. Sitting in the bridal sedan, my first thought upon hearing the Swona horns mixed with gong sounds was, how could a beggar wearing patched clothes afford all this? But recalling his noble bearing in every gesture he made earlier, my subconscious intuition told me his true identity wasn't simple. The Yoon family had just reached the halfway point in their carriage journey when they received news of flooding in Yangzhou. Several people lifted the curtain to look at the continuous rain outside, having no choice but to turn back reluctantly. 3 days later, the moment Father Yin stepped through the gate, he sensed something unusually quiet about the residence. The servants who usually attended were standing along the corridors with their hands at their sides, not even daring to breathe loudly. Mother Yun was the first to notice something wrong and asked a maid nearby, "Where is the eldest young lady?" The servants exchanged uneasy glances, until finally a young maid knelt down trembling, her voice shaking. "Young miss, she left the manor to be married 3 days ago, and we couldn't stop her no matter how we tried." "What?" Father Yun, Mother Yun, and Xavier Yin exclaimed almost simultaneously, their shock causing the lanterns under the corridor to sway. Father Yin stepped forward, pointing at the maid and shouting angrily, "To whom did she marry?" It was that beggar from last time, the one who caught the young lady's bridal ball beneath the tavern. That beggar even hired a wedding music troupe, specifically instructing the musicians to play from Imperial Avenue all the way to the alley entrance in the city outskirts. Now, the entire capital knows about this matter. Upon hearing this, Mother Yin felt darkness cloud her vision and her body went limp. But fortunately, Xavier Yin reacted quickly and caught her, leaning against her son's chest, her voice choked with tears. How foolish! How could she be so foolish? Cheryl Yun comforted Mother Yun while sighing repeatedly. How could sister do something so disgraceful to our family name just to spite us? And now she's causing Mother such worry. She was turned sideways. Xavier Yun, standing nearby, happened to catch the smugness at the corner of her mouth that she hadn't yet managed to conceal. He froze for a moment, his voice icy and sharper than ever before. "Cheryl, Father is already furious. Don't add fuel to the fire." Cheryl Yun jolted in shock, unable to believe that her brother, who had always doted on her, would reprimand her so harshly. Xavier Yun turned his face and stared directly at her. He vaguely sensed that something was amiss. "Cheryl, tell me the truth. Was it really true what you told me before? That Xiang Shu pushed you into the water in public at the old princess's birthday banquet?" Her face turned pale, and just as she was about to gather her thoughts to speak, Xavier Yin cut her off abruptly. "Think carefully before you answer. If I find out you lied." Cheryl Yun's hands, hidden beneath her sleeves, trembled uncontrollably, and when she spoke again, her voice was tinged with tears. "I fell into the lake by accident. I was just too ashamed and afraid you'd blame me for embarrassing the Yin family in front of outsiders." Xavier Yin spoke in disbelief. "So you slandered Xiang Shu, claiming she pushed you into the lake. And you made me stand up for you, causing her to embarrass herself during the bridal toss." His expression turned frighteningly cold. Mother Yin also looked at Cheryl Yun in astonishment, her tone tinged with disappointment. "Cheryl, how could you do such a thing?" Seeing this situation, Cheryl Yun fearfully hid behind Father Yun. Just as Xavier Yun was about to speak, Father Yun suddenly interrupted with a stern voice. "Enough. Cheryl is just being childish. It was just a joke, nothing to make a fuss about." Xavier Yun froze. He tried to open his mouth, but seeing his father's clearly biased expression, the words that reached his lips suddenly felt blocked. Unable to utter a single word, the midday sun shone through the window lattice, brightly illuminating the room, yet Xavierian felt cold all over. It was only under his persistent questioning that Cheryl Yun finally revealed the hidden truth. What about all the things he never knew? He suddenly remembered how Xiang Shu used to argue with reddened eyes time and again. I didn't push her. She fell on her own. I didn't steal anything. I didn't. I'm not. But from beginning to end, no one ever truly listened to a single word she said. Everyone's bias had subconsciously convicted her long ago. His eyes burned for a moment. Xavierian looked down at his hands and suddenly realized. How was his seemingly neutral silence over the years any different from his father's favoritism? Thinking this, he returned to his bedroom without a word. Jie Jiang rented a small courtyard on the outskirts of the city. The courtyard wasn't large, with only 2 rooms east and west, but it was clean. Double happiness characters were pasted on the windows, and red silk ribbons were wrapped around the beams. When my father and the others found this place, Jie Jiang had just left home. After the old lock on the courtyard gate was kicked open by a servant, my father led the others charging in. His eyes swept over the wedding character on the wall before landing on me, pointing and shouting, "Shuyun, you've dragged the minister's estate's reputation through the mud. Come back with me." I set down the scissors in my hand and looked up at him. "I'm married now. This is my home. You have no say over me." "Married?" He acted as if he'd heard the most ridiculous joke. "Parental consent, matchmaker's words, proper ceremonies. Which of these have you followed? What kind of marriage is this? You unfilial daughter." As the atmosphere grew tense, my mother hurried forward, grasping my cold hands, her voice trembling with tears. "Shuyun, don't blame your father. He's just worried about you," and spoke without thinking. "Come home with mother, won't you?" I lowered my eyes and remained silent. She softened her voice and continued, "Setting aside the minister's estate's dignity, do you really want to endure hardship in this shabby courtyard? Mother knows we neglected you because of Chu Yao recently and wrongly accused you of pushing her into the water. But Chu Yao has already admitted her mistake. Please forgive her." Hearing this, I found it utterly ridiculous. Last month, when Cheryl Yin falsely accused me of stealing her favorite hairpin, they punished me by making me kneel in the courtyard all night, citing improper conduct. Now, it's her turn to make a mistake. Yet, as simple she already knows she was wrong, is enough to sweep it all under the rug? Since when does the world work that way? Thinking of this, I raised my head, my voice cold and devoid of any warmth. "Fine, you want me to come back, don't you?" Both my mother and father were stunned, waiting for what I would say next. I took a deep breath and said word by word, "As long as you expel Cheryl Yun from this state." "Impossible," my parents blurted out almost simultaneously. The air fell silent for a moment, hearing the expected response. I let out a mocking laugh. Parental love has always been as elusive as smoke to me. Fortunately, I long ago stopped yearning for it. As if realizing they had refused too quickly, my mother spoke up awkwardly. "After all, Cheryl is your sister. What matter can't be resolved within a family." With that, she quickly pulled Cheryl Yin over. "Cheryl, hurry up and apologize to your sister." As Cheryl Yin stepped forward, she suddenly grabbed my arm tightly, her eyes downcast, long eyelashes trembling, her voice dripping with feigned grievance. "Sister, I was wrong. Please come home with us." As she finished speaking, she suddenly applied hidden force, digging her sharp nails deep into the flesh of my arm. I shoved her away abruptly and slapped her across the face without mercy. A sharp crack echoed through the air. Cheryl Yun was sent sprawling to the ground, tears instantly welling up in her eyes. "Sister, I already apologized to you. Why did you still hit me?" My father immediately raised his hand, roaring in fury, "You rebellious daughter." A chilling gust of wind from his palm brushed past my cheek. I instinctively closed my eyes, but the expected pain never came. My eyes snapped open to find several black, clad figures wearing dark masks had appeared around me. forming a protective circle. The leader had an iron grip, firmly clutching my father's wrist just as he was about to strike. My father's face contorted slightly with pain. "How dare you? Who are you people to lay hands on an imperial official in broad daylight?" Seeing this, my mother quickly pulled Cheryl Yun into her embrace. I calmly averted my gaze. Suddenly, a clear yet chilling voice came from beyond the crowd. I should be the one asking, "Father-in-law, why are you laying hands on my wife in broad daylight?" When Jae Jiang approached from outside, I almost didn't recognize him. His usual worn cotton clothes were replaced by a white brocade robe, and the stray hairs that used to cover his brow were now tied back with a jade crown, fully revealing his handsome features. He stood there, enveloped in an invisible aura of authority. My father froze, then his gaze fixed on the jade pendant swaying at his waist, his face gradually turning pale. "You are the crown prince of the Li Dynasty?" The figures of everyone in the residence completely disappeared at the end of the alley, leaving only Jae Jiang and me in the small courtyard. The air grew so still it became almost stiff. Since learning he was the crown prince of the Li Dynasty, I couldn't help but feel restrained. Even finding it awkward to look up at him, he seemed to see through my discomfort, softening his tone as he patiently explained. "I was originally on a mission to the Wei Kingdom to discuss the important matter of connecting our two countries' canals with the Wei Emperor, but encountered assassins along the way. To avoid further trouble, I disguised myself as a beggar and made my way to the capital. Unfortunately, my identity was eventually discovered that day. After narrowly escaping, I collapsed unconscious in an alley due to severe injuries. When I woke up again, I happened to catch your bridal ball." Then, Jae Jiang shifted the topic, a gentle warmth appearing in his eyes. "Actually, that wasn't our first meeting. When I first arrived in Shangjing, you were offering incense at the temple and mistook me for a beggar, even giving me some pancakes and loose silver coins." He looked at me with a tone of anticipation. "Do you remember?" After pondering for a moment, I shook my head and honestly replied, "I don't remember." The smile on Jae Jiang's face paused briefly, and he seemed momentarily speechless. The tips of my ears quietly turned red. The atmosphere became somewhat more relaxed than before. After we became more familiar with each other, Jae Jiang brought 2 rattan chairs and placed them under the old locust tree in the courtyard. We sat side by side, enjoying the night breeze while chatting idly, with the cicadas chirping softly in response from the base of the courtyard wall. Jae Jiang told me many stories about his experiences in the Li Dynasty. He said he grew up under the protection of his father the emperor and mother the empress, never suffering any hardships. At 15, he followed veteran generals into battle and caught the attention of the entire court with a brilliant ambush operation. By 17, he was overseeing tax code revisions that lightened the burden on common people, making his name known even among the ordinary citizens. As I listened, an image involuntarily surfaced in my mind. A dashing young man at the height of his glory, leaning against a slanted bridge on horseback, with countless maidens waving their red sleeves from every tower. Suddenly, Jae Jiang stopped speaking and turned to look at me. "What about you? What kind of girl were you before we met?" My fingertips gently traced the patterns on the rattan chair as I slightly lowered my gaze. After a long pause, I finally whispered softly, "I was someone who could be discarded at any time." Jae Jiang's breath hitched momentarily. He didn't speak, but quietly moved his rattan chair closer to mine until our shoulders lightly touched, bringing a gentle warmth. I continued speaking softly, recounting my past as if telling someone else's story. By the end, I suddenly felt my nose tingling and raised my hand to rub it. But Jae Jiang gently caught my wrist. The warmth from his palm transmitted through the fabric, steady and reassuring. He didn't say, "Don't be sad," but instead murmured softly, "It won't be like that anymore. In my eyes, you will always be the one who matters most, and no one shall ever cast you aside. Xiangshu, when we return to the Li Dynasty, I promise to give you the grand wedding you deserve." I looked up at him. The starlight in Jae Jiang's eyes shone brighter and warmer than the sky above. The breeze rustled through the locust leaves once more, while the Milky Way flowed silently overhead. In that moment, I felt a sudden, unmistakable flutter in my heart. The next morning, bathed in gentle sunlight, I headed to the fabric shop at the street corner with some silver coins. Just as my fingers brushed against a bolt of moon, white soft satin, a sweet yet deliberately sharp voice came from behind. "Shopkeeper, I'll take this piece of fabric." I turned around and, as expected, it was Cheryl Yun. She hurried over, reaching to snatch the fabric from my hands. "Sister, I have a banquet next month and desperately need this material for a new dress." I tightened my grip on the cloth, refusing to yield an inch. As we tussled over it, a commotion arose at the shop's entrance, accompanied by the shopkeeper's respectful greeting. "Young Master Xia, you're back." I looked up and saw Jaden Xia standing at the doorway, his blue robe dusted with travel stains, having apparently just returned to the residence with his elder brother, who had been managing the flood control efforts in Jiangnan. His gaze swept over Cheryl Yun and me, first furrowing his brow before settling on me with an undeniable firmness in his tone. "Xiang Shu, let Cheryl have it. It's just a piece of fabric," I retorted sharply. "On what grounds?" Jaden Xia's brow tightened further, his voice tinged with impatience. "Have you forgotten what I told you before? If you wish to marry into the Xia family, the only requirement is that you stop targeting Cheryl at every turn from now on, making such a scene over a mere piece of fabric. What would people think if this got out? Are everyone's lips sealed so tightly around here?" Jaden Xia actually still didn't know about my marriage. Just as I was about to explain, a familiar, clear male voice came from behind me, carrying a hint of amused warmth. "Oh, I wasn't aware my wife ever had plans to marry into the Xia family." Jaden Xia whirled around, his face instantly freezing. "What did you say?" Jiang, dressed in a light cyan brocade robe and carrying the sweet cakes I had been craving yesterday, walked in slowly, ignoring everyone else. He came straight to my side and naturally drew me closer to him. "Young Master Jaden, having just returned from Jiangnan, may not have heard the recent news in the capital. A few days ago, Xiang Shu and I were married. She is now my lawfully wedded wife." At the word wife, the warmth on Jaden Xia's face shattered completely, his hands beneath his blue robe clenching involuntarily. He first murmured, "How is that possible?" Then, as if struck by a thought, he abruptly turned to look at Cheryl Yun beside him. Is what he said true? Cheryl Yun's face turned even paler as she took half a step back, whispering softly, "He's the beggar who caught my sister's bridal ball, and also the crown prince of the Li Dynasty." Jaden Xia stared at me, the redness in his eyes intensifying like a rising tide. "Xiang Shu, you really married him?" Before I could respond, Jiang stepped directly in front of me, blocking Jaden Xia's line of sight. "Do you like this fabric? Then buy it. If it's not enough, pick 2 more for lining. The lotus root purple color you mentioned wanting last time is also available. Let's take it all back together." As he spoke, he called over the shopkeeper and paid decisively. When Jiang and I left, Jaden Xia remained frozen in place like a petrified statue, completely motionless. He kept murmuring that same phrase over and over. How is this possible? Wasn't I the one she liked the most? For the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet, Jiang was also among the invited guests. I originally didn't want to join in the festivities, but I couldn't resist his persistent coaxing. "Darling, could you really bear to watch your husband attend the banquet alone?" He leaned close to me, his tone deliberately pitiful. Seeing I didn't respond, he moved even closer and deliberately blinked. "Besides, would you feel at ease? Your husband is so handsome. What if some young lady from another family latches onto me?" He made me laugh, and I angrily pinched his waist. In the end, I accompanied him to the banquet. As we stepped through the palace gates, the probing gazes around us never left our figures. Whispered discussions drifted to our ears on the wind. "Have you heard? Minister Yun's daughter, in a fit of pique, threw her bridal ball to a beggar. And who would have thought that beggar turned out to be the crown prince of the Li Dynasty?" "Exactly. Our emperor originally intended for the princess to marry him, but the crown prince not only publicly declared he would marry no one but her, but also followed our Wei Kingdom's customs, arriving at the Yun residence in a grand sedan chair with 8 bearers, just like in the storybooks. Others muttered with a hint of sourness. So she becomes the crown princess just like that. After all, Crown Prince Zhang is from the Li Dynasty. What does a wedding in the Wei Kingdom even count for? I tighten my grip on Jie Zhang's hand, and as if sensing my unease, he gently patted the back of my hand in response. Just as the birthday banquet was at its liveliest, hurried footsteps suddenly sounded from outside the hall. Your Majesty, the Empress Dowager. The 5th prince has fallen into the water in the Imperial Gardens. The entire hall fell silent instantly. The emperor slammed down his wine cup, and a group of people hurriedly followed the guards toward the rear gardens. Just as they rounded the Moon Gate, they saw a crowd gathered by the lakeside. Drawing closer, they found Cheryl Yun and Xavier Yun being pinned to the ground by 2 guards. What happened? The emperor asked in a deep voice. The lead guard stepped forward to report. Your Majesty, when the 5th prince fell into the water, only Miss Yun and young Master Yun were present in the western part of the Imperial Garden. We apprehended them on the spot. As soon as he finished speaking, a sobbing nursemaid suddenly rushed out from behind the crowd. Pointing at Cheryl Yun, she cried, "It was her, just now. The young prince was playing with a sandbag by the lake and accidentally hit this Miss Yun. Before the prince could even apologize, she kicked him right into the lake." Cheryl Yun trembled all over, her face instantly turning as pale as paper. Struggling to lift her head, her panicked eyes swept over the crowd before finally fixing intently on Xavier Yun. With a voice choked with tears, she cried out, "It wasn't me, it was my brother. It was my brother who kicked the 5th prince into the lake because he thought the prince was in his way. I couldn't stop him." "What did you say?" Xavier Yun abruptly lifted his head, his pinned body writhing violently on the ground as he stared at Cheryl Yun with disbelief. His eyes filled with shock and disappointment. "Cheryl Yun, how could you lie? It was clearly you." "Brother," Cheryl Yun interrupted him, tears gushing forth. "It was you. Just moments ago you said the 5th prince was of lowly birth and an eyesore to you. How dare you deny it now?" Xavier Yun looked at her distorted face, his lips trembling slightly, but unable to form words. He closed his eyes and softly defended himself. "It wasn't me. I only rushed over after hearing someone had fallen into the water." Seeing this, my parents stumbled forward and knelt before the emperor, pressing their foreheads to the ground in repeated kowtows. "Your Majesty, spare us. Our children must have been framed. There must be more to this story. Cheryl and Xavier would never dare harm a prince." The Empress Dowager's face turned ashen. Just as she was about to reprimand them, a guard stepped forward holding an embroidered box and bowed, saying, "Your Majesty, this object was retrieved from the 5th prince's hand. It is a clothing button." The brocade box opened, revealing a pearl button with a bright luster, exactly the style sewn onto Cheryl Yun's dress today. Even the intertwined vine pattern was identical. My parents suddenly looked up, staring at Cheryl Yun in disbelief. You actually framed your own brother? Asu always treated you so well, giving you the best of everything first. How could you do such a thing? Are you even human?" Cheryl Yun slumped to the ground, staring at the button, her lips trembling as she could no longer utter a single word in defense. The emperor's face darkened ominously as he coldly declared, "Cheryl Yun, for harming the imperial heir with malicious intent, is to be imprisoned immediately, awaiting punishment. Minister Yun, for failing to educate his daughter and condoning such evil, is stripped of his 3rd rank ministerial position and confined to his home for reflection." Cheryl Yun wailed and screamed, "Your Majesty, spare me, have mercy. I didn't know he was a prince. I didn't know." As the decree was issued, my father collapsed to the ground, his face ashen with despair. Xavier Yun seemed to have all his soul drained away, kneeling rigidly in place with hollow eyes fixed on the ground. A moment later, He slowly raised his head, looking past the crowded masses to meet my gaze directly. I withdrew my glance after just one look at him. This lesson is called, only when the knife cuts your own flesh do you feel the pain. As I departed, Xavier Yin suddenly burst into a maddened laugh. As he laughed and laughed, tears began to stream down his face. Retribution. It's all retribution. When I set off for the Li Dynasty with Jie Jiang, our carriage reached the city gate. Suddenly, a familiar cry reached our ears, laced with sobs. Each call struck deep into my heart. Xiangshu, your father and mother were wrong. Xiangshu, please come back to see us. We truly were mistaken. My hand, holding the carriage curtain, paused, fingertips trembling slightly. Peeking through a corner of the curtain, I saw the two figures on the city wall. Their hair seemed to have whitened further, their forms appearing especially frail in the wind. I gazed at those two familiar figures, recalling the days and nights spent at the minister's estate. The grievances surged through my heart like a tide, yet the old pain was gone, leaving only tranquility. In the end, I withdrew my gaze and let the carriage curtain fall heavily. I once thought that following Jie Jiang back to the Li Dynasty to become his crown princess was the best ending to the story. But on the very first day, I stepped into the crown prince's palace. Reality slapped me in the face. That afternoon, a woman in martial attire barged in unannounced. Before I could react, her slap landed harshly on my cheek. Do you know that Jie Jiang and I have been betrothed since childhood? I am his rightful fiancé. I stood frozen, my face burning with pain as if caught in an absurd dream. Later, I learned she was Vera Lin, daughter of the general of the realm and Jie Jiang's childhood friend. It wasn't until Jie Jiang returned and saw my flushed face. His face instantly darkened as he held me tightly in his arms, his voice filled with heartache. I've never had romantic feelings for her. I only see her as a sister. Tomorrow I'll go before my father and ask him to cancel this engagement. Please believe me, even at that moment, I still held on to illusions about him, thinking he could handle everything properly. But by the next day, what I awaited wasn't news of their canceled engagement, but rather that Vera Lin had hanged herself. When Jie Jiang heard the news, his face changed dramatically, and without even offering an explanation, he rushed out without looking back. When he returned, his eyes were bloodshot, his expression so somber he seemed like a different person. His voice carried a cautious hesitation. Xiangshu, about Vera, could you become the princess first, once she recovers? I didn't listen to what followed, feeling only that the last remnants of hope in my heart shattered completely in that instant. Suddenly, I understood clearly, if I stayed by his side, the rest of my life would be confined within the narrow confines of the inner chambers, day after day competing with other women for jealousy and vying for one man's favor. Just thinking about such a life feels utterly meaningless. I looked at him and suddenly smiled, my tone unnervingly calm. Jie Jiang, let's just call it quits. As I made to turn and leave, Jie Jiang hastily reached out to stop me, but the moment his fingers brushed my sleeve, I pulled away, gazing into his eyes. I said word by word, you once promised me that I would never be abandoned again, that I would never suffer the slightest grievance. If you can't keep your word, don't make promises so lightly. That day, I walked alone down the long corridor of the Crown Prince's palace. A biting cold wind swept over me, yet I felt surrounded by the air of freedom. This time, I would not leave the power of choice in anyone else's hands. Jie Jiang gave me a sum of silver sufficient for a stable life, and even arranged a household registration for me in the Li Dynasty. This place had liberal customs, where women could become officials or engage in business. Without lingering further, I leased a tavern on the busiest street in the capital. Now, my Serenity House has gained quite a reputation in the capital. No one dared to look down on me anymore. Jie Jiang still visited often, sometimes with friends, sometimes drinking alone. As for whether he eventually married his childhood sweetheart, I never bothered to find out. As the wine cup emptied, all past attachments faded away. I used to be trapped in the obsession of being abandoned, measuring my worth by others' choices. Later, I learned to turn my gaze inward, asking myself for the first time what I truly liked and wanted. Now, when I think back on those days, I no longer feel resentment. Those regrets of not being firmly chosen by family or loved ones ultimately became mirrors that helped me see myself clearly. I realized that the best life isn't about making others regret, but about living comfortably and peacefully. I finally became my own most steadfast choice, and that is enough.